I'm Hamilton, 32 years old, and living what most would call a successful life in Boston. After years of hard work, promotions, and finally buying my dream condo downtown, I thought I had it all figured out. Funny thing is, my family never noticed any of it. No calls, no texts, nothing for years. Until my cousin posted photos of my new place online. Suddenly, everyone remembered I existed. Within hours, my phone lit up with a text from Mom. "You could sell it to help your sister." Just like that, they wanted $49,000. Before I get into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button, and subscribe if you want more stories about standing your ground. Growing up in Lakeville, Minnesota wasn't terrible by any measure. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house with a small backyard where Dad would sometimes grill on summer weekends. My parents, Frank and Diane, were hardworking people who maintained steady jobs. Dad worked as an insurance salesman, while Mom taught 4th grade at the local elementary school. On the surface, we were your typical middle-class American family, complete with yearly road trips to nearby states and occasional barbecues with neighbors. But beneath that ordinary facade, there was always something missing for me. From my earliest memories, it was clear that my sister Jessica held a special place in my parents' hearts that I could never quite reach. 3 years younger than me, Jessica was the apple of their eye, the golden child who could do no wrong. When we were kids, her crayon scribbles earned spots on the refrigerator, while my carefully drawn pictures somehow ended up in the recycling bin. My straight-A report cards received casual nods, while her B- grades were celebrated with ice cream trips. "Hamilton, your sister needs more attention. You've always been so independent," Mom would say whenever I questioned the imbalance. And so I learned to be exactly that, independent. I stopped seeking their approval by middle school, realizing it was a game I couldn't win. The pattern became even more apparent during our teenage years. When Jessica started high school, she immediately got involved with what my parents called the wrong crowd. Her grades slipped, and she developed an expensive taste in clothes and entertainment. While most parents might have established consequences, mine did the opposite. They increased her allowance, bought her a used car for her 16th birthday, and constantly bailed her out of financial mishaps. "She's just finding herself," Dad would explain after paying off another of Jessica's maxed-out credit cards when she was 17. Meanwhile, I worked 20 hours a week at the local grocery store to pay for my own clothes and save for college, all while maintaining my grades and participating in debate club. By the time college applications rolled around, I had saved nearly $8,000 from my part-time jobs and qualified for several merit scholarships. I wanted to study architecture at the University of Michigan, but my parents gently steered me toward business at the State University. "It's more practical, Hamilton," Dad said during one of our rare serious conversations. "Architecture is too risky, and the program is more expensive. We need to consider Jessica's college fund, too." That was the moment I truly understood where I stood. It wasn't just that they loved Jessica more. It was that my dreams would always be secondary to hers. I swallowed my disappointment and enrolled in the business program at Minnesota State, using my savings and scholarships to cover most costs while working part-time at a campus bookstore. During those 4 years, my communication with family dwindled to holiday visits and occasional Sunday phone calls. When I did go home, the conversations inevitably centered around Jessica's latest crisis or achievement. She had dropped out of community college after 1 semester, declaring it too restrictive for her creative spirit, and opened an online jewelry business that failed within 6 months. Each time Jessica's ventures collapsed, my parents emptied their wallets to help her start again. When I graduated with honors in marketing and business administration, they attended the ceremony but left immediately after to help Jessica move into a new apartment. No celebration dinner, not even a proper congratulations. My first job after college was at a small marketing firm in Minneapolis, about 40 minutes from my hometown. The pay was modest but provided a foot in the door of the industry. I found a small apartment with a roommate and began building my professional life. During my first year there, I landed several small accounts and even received a minor promotion to junior account manager. When I called home to share the news, Dad said. "That's nice, son," before quickly shifting the conversation to Jessica's latest venture, a handmade soap business that was really taking off. I later learned from a mutual friend that my parents had invested $15,000 in this new business, despite having to take out a second mortgage on their house. The final straw came during my second year at the firm. A larger company based in Boston reached out with a job offer after being impressed by a campaign I had designed for a mutual client. The position offered a significant salary increase, better benefits, and room for advancement. It was an opportunity I couldn't pass up, though it meant moving over 1,000 miles away. I invited my parents and Jessica to a goodbye dinner at a nice restaurant in Minneapolis. Dad checked his watch every 15 minutes. Mom asked more questions about the restaurant's decor than my new job, and Jessica showed up an hour late, immediately dominating the conversation with news of her engagement to Tyler, a man she'd been dating for just 3 months. "We're thinking about a spring wedding," Jessica announced, flashing a sizable diamond ring that I knew neither she nor her unemployed boyfriend could afford. Mom and Dad already promised to help with the deposit for the venue. I sat there, picking at my uneaten dessert, realizing that no one had even asked when I was leaving for Boston or expressed any sadness about my departure. The check came. My father reluctantly paid after I had already offered twice, and we parted with awkward hugs in the parking lot. "Keep in touch," Mom said casually, as if I were going on a weekend trip rather than moving across the country. That night, I packed the last of my boxes and made peace with the fact that I was truly on my own now. Perhaps it had always been that way, and moving to Boston was just making it official. My first few months in Boston were harder than I had anticipated. The marketing firm, Bright Path Solutions, operated at a much faster pace than my previous employer. Projects that would have taken weeks to complete in Minneapolis were expected in days. My small studio apartment in Allston cost nearly twice what I'd paid in Minnesota, and despite the salary increase, my budget was tight. Boston itself felt overwhelming at first. The winding streets that defied the logical grid system I was used to, the aggressive drivers, the distinct neighborhoods, each with their own character and unspoken rules. I got lost frequently, both literally on the confusing streets and figuratively in trying to find my place in this historic city that seemed to have no space for newcomers. During those first lonely months, I tried to maintain regular contact with my family. I called home every Sunday evening, sent photos of my new workplace and apartment, even mailed Minnesota-themed gifts to remind them of me. The responses were increasingly sporadic and brief. "Sorry, can't talk long. We're helping Jessica plan the wedding," became Mom's standard greeting when she bothered to answer at all. Dad rarely came to the phone anymore, always supposedly busy with some household repair or watching a game that couldn't be paused. Jessica's wedding came and went without me. The invitation arrived just 2 weeks before the date, with a handwritten note. Short notice, I know, but we had to move it up. No pressure to come all that way. I later discovered through social media posts that the wedding had been planned for months. My absence was convenient, saving them the cost of another plate at the reception and the awkwardness of explaining who I was to Tyler's family. As my first year in Boston turned into 2 and then 3, my professional life began to flourish in inverse proportion to my family relationships. I was assigned to larger accounts, received positive performance reviews, and built a reputation for creative solutions to marketing challenges. My boss, Stephanie Wilson, became something of a mentor, advocating for my ideas in meetings with senior management and providing guidance on navigating corporate politics. "You have a unique perspective, Hamilton," she told me during my second-year review. "You see angles others miss. Don't lose that." With her endorsement, I was promoted to senior account manager and given lead responsibility for one of our biggest clients, a tech startup developing innovative home automation systems. The campaign I developed for their product launch exceeded all expectations, generating triple the projected media coverage and significantly boosting sales. This success led to another promotion, this time to Associate Creative Director, with a substantial salary increase and my own small team to manage. I moved to a better apartment in Cambridge, made friends through work in a recreational soccer league, and slowly built a life that felt meaningful and satisfying. Meanwhile, Back in Minnesota, Jessica's life continued its predictable pattern of chaos. Her marriage to Tyler quickly revealed itself to be what everyone but my parents had predicted: a disaster. Tyler, who had briefly worked as a car salesman before the wedding, quit his job within months to focus on his music career. They moved into a house they couldn't afford in an upscale suburb, courtesy of a down payment from my parents. I learned most of this not from direct communication, but through cousin Marcus, the one family member who maintained regular contact. Marcus, my mother's nephew who lived in Chicago, called every few weeks just to catch up, genuinely interested in my life and career. "Your parents refinanced their house again to help Jessica and Tyler buy that place," Marcus informed me during one of our calls. "Aunt Diane and Uncle Frank are talking about postponing retirement now. They're worried about money but won't admit it." I felt a familiar mix of frustration and resignation at this news. My parents were in their early 60s now, at an age when they should be securing their retirement, not depleting their savings to enable my sister's irresponsible choices. During my 3rd year in Boston, I made one last significant attempt to reconnect with my family. I spent hours selecting thoughtful Christmas gifts: a high-quality power tool set for Dad's woodworking hobby, a series of cooking classes at a renowned Minnesota culinary school for Mom, and for Jessica and Tyler, a generous gift card to a popular home goods store since they had recently moved. I shipped everything early with handwritten cards and followed up with a call to confirm receipt. Mom answered, sounding distracted. "Oh yes, the packages arrived. Very nice, Hamilton. Listen, I can't talk right now. We're packing." "Packing? For what?" I asked, confused. "Our cruise, of course. Didn't I mention it? We're taking Jessica and Tyler to the Caribbean for Christmas. A second honeymoon for them, really. They've been having a rough patch." The revelation hit like a physical blow. Not only had they made Christmas plans without even considering including me, but they hadn't bothered to mention it until I called. I managed to keep my voice steady as I wished them a good trip and ended the call. That night, I deleted the airline app from my phone where I'd been saving a flight home for the holidays. Instead, I accepted an invitation from my friend David to join his family for Christmas dinner. It was there, surrounded by the genuine warmth of a family that barely knew me, that I realized what I had been missing all along. The following year brought complete communication breakdown. My birthday passed without a call or text from anyone, except Marcus. Mother's Day and Father's Day came and went with my cards and gifts acknowledged only by brief, generic text messages. I stopped calling after 3 consecutive Sunday calls went to voicemail with no return call. By the 4-year mark of my move to Boston, contact with my immediate family had dwindled to nearly nothing. An occasional text from Mom asking if I was still at that marketing company, a birthday card signed by both parents but clearly written only by Mom, and increasingly rare social media interactions where they would sometimes like my posts days after they were published. It was Marcus who kept me tethered to family news, though even he seemed uncomfortable sharing the latest developments. "Jessica and Tyler are opening some kind of boutique clothing store now," he told me reluctantly during one call. "Your dad mentioned taking out a loan against his 401k to help with startup costs." I closed my eyes, imagining the retirement fund my father had diligently built over 30 years of work being drained away for yet another of Jessica's doomed ventures. But I had learned that any expression of concern or criticism on my part would be met with defensiveness and accusations of jealousy. "I hope it works out for them," I said neutrally, and changed the subject. The Christmas incident marked a turning point for me. Rather than continuing to seek validation from people who seemed incapable of providing it, I decided to invest that energy into my own growth and well-being. On the recommendation of my friend David, I began seeing Dr. Patricia Logan, a therapist specializing in family dynamics and personal development. "What you're describing sounds like a classic golden child and scapegoat dynamic," Dr. Logan explained during one of our early sessions. "It's not about you personally. These are roles that developed in your family system, and they're incredibly difficult to change from within the system." Through weekly sessions, I began to understand how these patterns had shaped my self-perception and behavior. I had become the perpetual caretaker, the responsible one who needed no support because I was so independent. I had internalized the message that my needs were secondary, that achievement alone wasn't enough to merit attention or care. Your worth isn't determined by your family's ability to recognize it, Dr. Logan told me during a particularly difficult session, and you don't need to keep proving yourself to people who have shown they can't or won't see you. This realization was both liberating and painful. I mourned the family relationship I had always wanted but never had, while simultaneously freeing myself from the exhausting cycle of seeking their approval. I focused instead on building authentic connections with people who valued me as I was. My friendship circle expanded beyond work colleagues to include members of my soccer league, neighbors in my apartment building, and a book club I joined at the local library. I made a conscious effort to be vulnerable and authentic in these relationships, sharing not just my successes but also my struggles and fears. To my surprise, this openness was met not with rejection but with reciprocal trust and deepening connections. As my personal life stabilized, my professional trajectory continued upward. The home automation campaign had attracted attention throughout the industry, leading to speaking invitations at marketing conferences and even a feature in Adweek, highlighting innovative approaches to tech product launches. Stephanie, my mentor, approached me about leading a new division focused specifically on emerging technology clients. The promotion to creative director came with significantly increased responsibilities and a substantial salary bump that placed me in a financial bracket I had never imagined reaching before 40. "You've earned this, Hamilton," Stephanie said, as she offered me the position. "Your work speaks for itself, and the entire executive team recognizes your value to the company." Those words meant more than she could know. To be seen, appreciated, and rewarded based solely on my own merit was a novel experience after years of being overlooked. I accepted the position and threw myself into building my new team and division. With my increased income, I began making strategic financial decisions. I maximized my 401k contributions, opened additional investment accounts, and worked with a financial advisor to create a comprehensive plan for building long-term wealth. I lived well below my means, maintaining my moderately priced Cambridge apartment while saving aggressively. After 2 years of disciplined saving and watching the Boston real estate market, I had accumulated enough for a substantial down payment on a property. I worked with a realtor to find the perfect place, a 2-bedroom condo in a renovated historic building in Boston's South End neighborhood. The property featured high ceilings, exposed brick walls, hardwood floors, and large windows overlooking a tree-lined street. The building included amenities like a small fitness center, rooftop deck, and secure parking, rarities in Boston real estate. The purchase price stretched my budget to its limit, but my financial advisor confirmed it was a sound investment in one of the city's most desirable and appreciating neighborhoods. The day I signed the closing documents and received the keys, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment and stability. This place was mine, earned through my own efforts, a tangible manifestation of the life I had built for myself. I spent the next month personalizing the space, selecting furniture that complemented the character of the building while reflecting my own taste. I created a comfortable guest bedroom for when friends visited and a small home office where I could work during late evenings or weekends. The kitchen, with its granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, inspired me to improve my cooking skills, and I began hosting small dinner parties for friends and colleagues. During this period of personal growth and achievement, Marcus remained my one consistent family connection. Unlike my parents and Jessica, he seemed genuinely happy for my successes and supportive during challenges. He had followed a similar path, moving away from our hometown to build a successful career as an architectural engineer in Chicago. Our phone conversations evolved into video calls, and we established a tradition of visiting each other's cities at least once a year. During his visits to Boston, I would show him my favorite neighborhoods, restaurants, and hidden gems I had discovered over the years. He did the same when I visited Chicago, proudly guiding me through the architectural wonders of his adopted city. When I moved into my new condo, Marcus was the first person I invited to visit. He immediately arranged to take a long weekend off work and flew to Boston. I picked him up at the airport on a Friday evening in early spring, excited to show him not just my new home but the life I had built. "This city suits you," Marcus observed as we drove from the airport through the illuminated streets of nighttime Boston. "You seem more yourself here than you ever did back home." I nodded, realizing the truth in his observation. I think I needed the distance to figure out who I am without trying to fit into the role my family had created for me. That weekend, I gave Marcus the full tour of my life in Boston. We visited my office, where he met Stephanie and other colleagues who had become friends. We played a casual match with my soccer team, ate at my favorite neighborhood restaurants, and spent evenings on my new rooftop deck sharing drinks and conversations about our lives. On Saturday afternoon, Marcus took several photos of me in my new condo, capturing my genuine happiness as I showed him different features of the space. There was one particular shot of me standing by the large living room windows, the city skyline visible behind me, that perfectly captured how I felt, established, confident, at home. Mind if I post a few of these? Marcus asked as he scrolled through the photos. People back home should see how well you're doing. I hesitated momentarily, thinking about how little my family had seemed to care about my life for the past 5 years. But then I shrugged. Sure, why not? It's not like they pay attention to what I'm up to anyway. Neither of us could have predicted how significantly that casual permission would disrupt the careful balance I had established between my past and present lives. Marcus left Boston late Sunday afternoon after a weekend filled with good food, laughter, and the kind of conversations that leave you feeling understood and appreciated. After dropping him at the airport, I returned to my condo feeling grateful for his visit and the genuine connection we maintained despite the distance. Monday morning found me back at work, immersed in client meetings and creative briefings. It wasn't until I took a late lunch break and checked my phone that I noticed something unusual. I had 27 new notifications across various social media platforms and 5 text messages from numbers I rarely heard from. Confused, I opened the most recent text first, from a distant aunt on my father's side, who had never before contacted me directly. "Hamilton, your place looks amazing. So proud of your success in the big city." Similar messages filled my notification center. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, former high school classmates, distant relatives, all suddenly interested in my life and commenting on my gorgeous condo and impressive view. I navigated to Marcus's profile and found the source of the sudden attention. He had posted a series of photos from our weekend, including several of my new home. The main image showed me standing in my living room with the floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing the Boston skyline behind me. Another captured me preparing dinner in the kitchen, and a third showed us enjoying drinks on the rooftop deck with the city lights twinkling below. His caption read, "Awesome weekend visiting my cousin Hamilton in Boston. So proud of everything he's accomplished. Killer job, amazing new condo, and still the same down-to-earth guy he's always been. Some people just know how to do life right." The post had garnered over 100 likes and dozens of comments, many from people in our hometown or extended family circle. I scrolled through them, noting the sudden interest from people who had shown none during my years of building this life. It was flattering, but also somewhat disconcerting, as if my existence had only become real to them when presented as a success story on social media. I responded to a few messages, keeping my replies brief but polite, then returned to work. Throughout the afternoon, my phone continued to buzz with notifications, which I mostly ignored until I saw a name that made my heart skip: Mom. It was the first direct contact from her in over 6 months. The text was casual, as if we spoke regularly. "Hamilton, your place looks lovely. When did you move? Is it in a good neighborhood? Must have been expensive in Boston." I stared at the message, a complex mix of emotions rising within me. After years of minimal interest in my life, she was suddenly curious about my living situation, specifically about its cost. I waited until after work to respond, keeping my answer factual but vague. "Thanks. Moved in last month. South End area, very safe. Boston real estate is definitely pricey but worth the investment." Her response came quickly, which was unusual in itself. "It looks very fancy. Did you buy or rent? Your father and I were just talking about how impressed we are." Again, the focus on the financial aspects struck me as odd. I answered truthfully but kept details minimal. "I bought it. Been saving for years and the timing was right." The conversation lapsed after my response, but the notifications from extended family continued through the evening. My phone rang around 8 with a number I hadn't seen in nearly a year. My father. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. "Hamilton, how's my boy doing?" His voice boomed with an enthusiasm I couldn't recall hearing directed at me before. "I'm doing well, Dad. How are you and Mom?" "Oh, we're hanging in there. You know how it is at our age," he chuckled. "Say, we saw those pictures Marcus posted. Quite a place you've got yourself there. You must be doing really well at that company." "The company's been good to me," I replied, noting how quickly he had shifted the conversation to my financial situation. "That's wonderful, son. Just wonderful." A brief pause followed. "Listen, we should catch up properly. It's been too long." We spoke for another 10 minutes, my father asking surprisingly detailed questions about my job title, the company's size, and whether I had received stock options as part of my compensation package. He shared almost nothing about their lives in return, deflecting my questions about his and Mom's retirement plans and Jessica's situation. As we ended the call, he mentioned casually, "Your sister's been asking about you. Says she might give you a call soon." Sure enough, the very next morning, I received a text from Jessica, the first direct communication from her in over 2 years. "Hey big bro, long time no talk. Your place looks amazing. We should video chat soon and catch up. Miss you." The sudden attention after years of indifference left me with a growing sense of unease. That evening, I called Marcus to discuss the unexpected fallout from his innocent post. "It's weird, right?" I asked after describing the flurry of communication. 5 years of radio silence, and suddenly everyone's interested in my life because they saw my condo. Marcus sighed heavily. "I'm sorry, Hamilton. I didn't think it would cause all this. Want me to take the post down?" "No, it's fine. It's just strange." Dad asked about my compensation package and stock options. Who does that after barely speaking to their son for years? "That does seem odd," Marcus agreed, then hesitated. "Look, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I heard from my mom that Jessica and Tyler are in financial trouble again. The boutique failed within 6 months, and they've got a mountain of debt. Your parents have been helping, but I think they're stretched thin." The pieces began to fall into place. The sudden interest, the specific questions about my finances, the unexpected reconnection attempts. It wasn't about missing me or caring about my life. It was about assessing my resources. My suspicion was confirmed the following day when I received another text from my mother, this one more direct than the last. "Hamilton, I've been thinking about your beautiful condo. Property is such a good investment, but sometimes it ties up money that could be used for other things. Have you ever considered selling it and investing the profits elsewhere? Or perhaps using some of your equity to help family? Your sister is going through a difficult time right now." I read the message several times, stunned by its transparency. After years of emotional distance, my mother was suggesting I liquidate my home to help Jessica, not asking how I was doing, not expressing genuine interest in my life, but immediately looking at my achievement as a resource to be redirected toward my sister. Before I could formulate a response, another text arrived. "Your father and I would like to have a family video call tonight. Jessica and Tyler will join too. How about 8 o'clock your time? It's important." In that moment, I knew exactly what the call would entail, and I felt a strange calm settle over me. Years of therapy and personal growth had prepared me for this confrontation, though I never expected it would come in quite this form. I texted back a simple, "I'll be there," and spent the rest of the day mentally preparing for what was to come. At precisely 8 o'clock that evening, my laptop chimed with an incoming video call. I had positioned myself at my dining table with a neutral background, dressed casually but professionally in a light blue button-down shirt. I took a deep breath and accepted the call. 4 faces appeared on my screen, my parents sitting together on their living room sofa, and Jessica and Tyler in what appeared to be their kitchen. My mother's face brightened with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hamilton, there you are. It's so good to see you. You look well," she said, as if we regularly had these family video chats. "It's been a while," I replied neutrally. "How is everyone?" What followed was 20 minutes of strained small talk. My father asked superficial questions about Boston's weather and sports teams. My mother commented on my appearance, noting I had filled out in a healthy way since she last saw me. Jessica dominated much of the conversation with stories about her friends and social activities, carefully avoiding any mention of her failed business ventures. Throughout this exchange, I noticed Tyler fidgeting uncomfortably in his seat, occasionally glancing at something off-screen. He had aged considerably since the photos I'd seen from their wedding 5 years ago. His once trendy haircut had receded into a premature bald spot, and stress lines marked his forehead. Finally, after exhausting the safe topics, my mother cleared her throat and shifted forward on the sofa. "Hamilton, we wanted to talk to you about something important. A family matter." I nodded, waiting. "As you know, family should always be there for each other," she began, her voice taking on the lecturing tone I remembered from childhood. "Your father and I have always done everything we could to support both our children." My father nodded solemnly beside her. "Through thick and thin," he added. "Jessica and Tyler are going through a challenging time right now," my mother continued. "The economy has been difficult for small business owners, and unfortunately, their boutique has had to close." Jessica interjected. "The location was terrible. The landlord promised foot traffic that never materialized, and our marketing company completely failed us." She glanced at me as if expecting sympathy, or perhaps acknowledging my marketing expertise. "The thing is," my mother pushed on, "they've found themselves in a bit of a financial bind. Their mortgage is underwater, and they've received a foreclosure notice." Tyler spoke for the first time, his voice strained. "We're 3 months behind. The bank won't work with us anymore." "We've done everything we can to help," my father added. "But your mother and I are facing our own challenges. The second mortgage, the loans for Jessica's business. Our retirement accounts aren't what they should be at this stage." The setup was complete, and I could see where this was heading. Still, I was unprepared for the directness of my mother's next statement. "Hamilton, we've been thinking about your situation. You're single, successful, with what must be a very well-paying job, and now this beautiful condo, which must have significant equity already in this market." She paused, smoothing her skirt. "We were hoping you might consider helping your sister with a loan, just until they get back on their feet." "How much are you talking about?" I asked, keeping my voice even. My parents exchanged glances before my father answered. "Jessica and Tyler need $49,000 to catch up on their mortgage and prevent foreclosure." The amount hung in the virtual air between us. $49,000. Not a small favor or token assistance, but a sum that would significantly impact my own financial security. "That's a substantial amount," I observed. "Well, for someone in your position, it's probably not that much," Jessica chimed in, a hint of the entitlement I remembered coloring her tone. "You could probably just take out a home equity loan or something. You wouldn't even feel it. Or you could sell the condo," my mother suggested casually, as if recommending I change my shirt. "Property in Boston must be worth a fortune. You could help Jessica, have plenty left over for a smaller place, and still have a nice investment." I sat in stunned silence for a moment, trying to process the audacity of what I was hearing. After years of minimal contact, after missing every important milestone in my adult life, they were suggesting I sell my home or take on significant debt to rescue Jessica from yet another financial disaster. "Let me understand this correctly," I said slowly. "You're asking me to either go into debt or sell my home to provide $49,000 to help Jessica and Tyler keep a house they can't afford?" "When you put it like that, it sounds so cold," my mother replied, frowning. "This is your sister, Hamilton. Family helps family. Your father and I have always taught you that." "And this would be a loan," my father added quickly. "They'd pay you back, of course, once they get back on their feet." I looked at Jessica and Tyler. "Like the loans Mom and Dad have given you over the years? Have those been repaid?" Jessica's face flushed. "That's different. They're our parents." "And I'm just your brother who you haven't spoken to in 2 years," I replied, feeling a strange calm despite the tension, "until you saw my condo on social media." "Now, Hamilton," my father interjected with a warning tone. "There's no need to be petty. We're all busy with our own lives. Communication goes both ways." I took a deep breath, recognizing the familiar pattern of deflection and guilt. "I need some time to think about this," I said finally. "It's a significant request, and I'd want to review my finances carefully before making any commitment. Relief visibly washed over my parents' faces. They had expected immediate resistance and were pleased with what they perceived as openness to their request. "Of course, take your time," my mother said magnanimously, "but the foreclosure proceedings are moving forward, so sooner would be better than later." We ended the call shortly after, with promises to reconnect in a few days. As soon as the screen went dark, I felt a wave of emotions crash over me. Anger at the presumption, hurt at the transactional nature of their sudden interest in my life, and a deep sadness for the family relationship I had always wished for but clearly would never have. I immediately called my closest friend David, who had witnessed my family dynamics from a distance over the years. "They want you to do what?" he exclaimed after I recounted the conversation. "After all this time? That's beyond entitled. Hamilton, that's delusional." His indignation was validating but didn't help me decide how to respond. The following day, I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Logan, my therapist. "What are your thoughts about their request?" she asked after I described the situation. "Part of me wants to help because that's what I've always done. It's the role I've played my whole life," I admitted. "But another part feels like this would just be enabling the same dysfunctional patterns that have been hurting all of us for years." Dr. Logan nodded thoughtfully. "Those patterns won't change unless someone changes their participation in them. What would saying yes mean for you emotionally, and what would saying no represent?" Those questions stayed with me for days as I wrestled with my decision. Saying yes would mean sacrificing my own financial security to maintain a toxic status quo. Saying no would mean finally breaking the pattern of being the responsible one who sacrifices for Jessica's irresponsibility. As I contemplated these options, I received daily texts from my mother with increasing urgency, reminders that time was running out for Jessica and Tyler. My father called twice, his tone oscillating between gentle persuasion and subtle guilt trips about family obligation. Jessica sent late-night messages describing their fear of homelessness and the impact foreclosure would have on their credit. "We'd never be able to recover," she wrote. "You're our only hope, Hamilton." The pressure was relentless, but it also clarified something important. This wasn't really about money. It was about roles and expectations, about a family system that had always prioritized one child's needs over the others. And for the first time in my life, I felt ready to challenge that system directly. The 5 days following the initial video call were a whirlwind of emotions and introspection. Each text from my mother increased my resolve to address the deeper issues at play rather than simply responding to the financial request. Each voicemail from my father, filled with thinly veiled manipulation about family duty, strengthened my determination to establish healthy boundaries. I knew I needed more information before confronting my family, so I called the one person who could provide an unfiltered perspective. "Marcus, I need the real story about Jessica and Tyler's situation," I said when he answered. "Not the version my parents are telling me." Marcus sighed heavily. "I was afraid this would happen. Look, Hamilton, it's worse than they're probably admitting, but not in the way you might think." He proceeded to share what he had learned through family channels. Jessica and Tyler had indeed started a boutique clothing store, funded primarily by my parents' retirement savings. But its failure wasn't simply due to poor location or bad marketing as they had claimed. They were taking inventory and cash from the business for personal expenses, Marcus explained. Designer clothes, a boat they couldn't afford, weekend trips to Cancun. My mom saw their social media posts and mentioned how weird it was that they were living so lavishly while supposedly struggling with the business. This aligned with patterns I had observed throughout Jessica's adult life. Businesses started with enthusiasm but managed irresponsibly. Financial support from my parents diverted to lifestyle upgrades rather than business development, and a consistent refusal to accept accountability for failures. "What about the foreclosure?" I asked. "Is that real?" "The house is definitely in foreclosure," Marcus confirmed. "But from what I've heard, they've been underwater for over a year. They stopped making payments consistently long before the boutique closed. They've received multiple warnings and had several chances to work out payment plans with the bank." The most revealing information came at the end of our conversation. "Did you know your dad cashed out what was left of his $401K last year to pay off Jessica and Tyler's credit card debt? Over $60,000. They promised to make better financial decisions after that, but 3 months later, Tyler bought a used Porsche. This final detail cemented my decision. The $49,000 wouldn't solve the underlying problem. It would be a temporary band-aid on a situation created by years of irresponsible choices and enabled by my parents' unwillingness to establish boundaries. That evening, I sat down at my computer and created a document outlining key points I wanted to address in the upcoming family conversation. I wasn't just preparing to decline their financial request. I was preparing to fundamentally change my role in the family system. I scheduled the video call for Saturday morning, when everyone could participate without work distractions. In the hours before, I went for a long run along the Charles River, using the physical exertion to clear my mind and strengthen my resolve. Back at my condo, I showered, dressed in a casual but put-together outfit, and set up my laptop at my dining table, the same neutral setting as before. When the call connected and my family's faces appeared on screen, I noticed immediately that they were positioned differently than in our previous conversation. My parents sat closer together, their expressions serious but expectant. Jessica had clearly been crying, her makeup slightly smudged, while Tyler looked both desperate and annoyed. "Hamilton," my mother began without preamble, "have you made a decision? The bank has given Jessica and Tyler a final deadline." I nodded, my hands steady as I folded them on the table before me. "I have made a decision, but before I share it, I'd like to discuss the larger context here." My father frowned. "What context?" "This is pretty straightforward, son. Your sister needs help, and you're in a position to provide it. The context," I continued calmly, "is our family's pattern of interaction over the past decade or more. The context is that I haven't received a birthday call from any of you in 3 years. The context is that I moved across the country, built a career, bought a home. All significant life events. And none of you showed any interest until you saw my condo on social media and realized I might have financial resources you could access." Jessica began to protest, but I held up a hand. "Please let me finish. I've listened to all of you. Now I'm asking for the same courtesy." To my surprise, she fell silent, and I continued. "I've spent years trying to understand why our family works the way it does. Why Jessica's needs have always taken priority over mine. Why my achievements have been consistently minimized while her struggles have been met with unlimited support. I've made peace with much of it through therapy and self-reflection. I don't harbor resentment anymore, but I do recognize unhealthy patterns when I see them." My mother's face tightened. "This isn't about childhood jealousies, Hamilton. This is about your sister facing homelessness." "It's actually about much more than that," I countered. "It's about accountability and enabling. It's about patterns that hurt everyone involved, including Jessica." I turned my attention directly to my sister. "Jessica, this isn't your first financial crisis, and based on your choices, it won't be your last unless something fundamentally changes. The boutique didn't fail because of location or marketing. It failed because you and Tyler misused business funds for personal luxuries." Tyler's face reddened. "Who told you that? That's private family business. The boat, the designer clothes, the trips to Cancun while your business was struggling, these weren't private. You posted them all over social media," I replied evenly. "Just like Dad cashing out his remaining retirement savings last year to pay off your credit card debt, only for Tyler to buy a Porsche 3 months later." My father looked genuinely shocked. "How did you know about that?" "That's not important," I said. "What's important is acknowledging the reality of the situation. This isn't about $49,000. This is about years of choices that have led to this point, and about what happens next." I took a deep breath before delivering my decision. "I will not be providing the money you've requested. I won't sell my home or take out loans to enable a pattern that ultimately hurts everyone involved, including Jessica and Tyler." The reaction was immediate, and exactly what I had anticipated. Jessica burst into tears, accusing me of being selfish and heartless. Tyler began ranting about family loyalty. My mother's face hardened into an expression of righteous indignation, while my father looked both angry and embarrassed. "After everything we've done for you," my mother began, her voice trembling with emotion. "We raised you, put you through college. I worked my way through college. I corrected gently. I had scholarships and part-time jobs. You contributed minimally because most resources were directed to Jessica's needs. So this is punishment? Revenge for some perceived childhood slights? My father demanded. I shook my head. No. This is me refusing to participate in a destructive pattern anymore. This is me establishing healthy boundaries. I love all of you, but I won't enable behaviors that ultimately harm everyone involved. I turned back to Jessica, whose tears had suddenly dried as she realized emotional manipulation wasn't working. Jessica, I would be happy to help you in other ways. I can connect you with financial counseling resources. I can help you develop a sustainable budget. I can provide guidance on rebuilding your credit over time, but I won't provide money that will only temporarily delay the inevitable while reinforcing harmful patterns. We don't need your condescending advice, Tyler snapped. We need the money you clearly have plenty of, sitting in your fancy condo while your sister suffers. That's enough, my father interjected, surprising me. He looked tired suddenly, the anger draining from his face. Hamilton has made his decision. We need to respect that, even if we disagree. My mother wasn't ready to concede. Hamilton, I want you to think very carefully about what this means for your relationship with this family. Some decisions can't be undone. The implicit threat was clear, but instead of feeling intimidated, I felt an unexpected sense of clarity and peace. I've thought about this very carefully, I assured her. I understand what's at stake, and I stand by my decision. I hope that eventually you'll understand that this comes from a place of love, not rejection. Jessica made one last attempt, her voice taking on the pleading tone that had always worked with our parents. Hamilton, please, we'll lose everything. Where will we live? You have options, I said gently. You can sell the house before foreclosure and use any equity to secure more affordable housing. You can both find jobs that match your actual expenses. You can make difficult but necessary choices now that will lead to a more stable future. The call ended shortly after, with Jessica hanging up abruptly after a final accusation of betrayal. My parents lingered awkwardly for a moment before my father murmured something about needing time to process and ended their connection. I sat at my dining table for a long time afterward, expecting to feel guilt or doubt about my decision. Instead, I felt an overwhelming sense of liberation. For the first time in my life, I had directly challenged the dysfunctional patterns that had defined our family relationships. I had spoken my truth calmly and with compassion, even when faced with manipulation and anger. Whatever came next, I had taken a stand for healthier relationships and genuine support rather than enabling. It wasn't about the money. It was about finally recognizing my own worth and refusing to participate in dynamics that devalued it. The confrontation had been painful, but it felt like a necessary step toward authenticity and healing, if not for my entire family, then at least for me. The hours immediately following the video call were strangely quiet. I had expected a barrage of angry texts and calls, but instead encountered silence. This temporary peace ended the next morning when my phone began buzzing with notifications shortly after sunrise. First came a lengthy text from my mother, oscillating between guilt trips, after all we sacrificed for you, and dire predictions about Jessica's future. My father followed with a voicemail, his tone more resigned than angry, suggesting I had disappointed the entire family but that he hoped I would come to my senses soon. The most volatile reaction came from Jessica, who sent a series of increasingly hostile messages accusing me of enjoying her suffering and being jealous of her life. The final text read simply, I hope your fancy condo makes up for not having a family anymore. I read each message and listen to every voicemail, acknowledging the emotions behind them without allowing them to dictate my own. Years of therapy had taught me to recognize these reactions as the predictable response of a system resisting change. Their anger wasn't really about the money. It was about my refusal to play my assigned role. As the day progressed, the family conflict expanded beyond my immediate family. Aunts, uncles, and cousins began taking sides, many without knowing the full story. Some sent messages of support, having witnessed the dynamics from the outside for years. Others condemned my selfishness and lack of family loyalty, clearly having heard only my parents' version of events. Rather than engaging with this widening drama, I reached out to the people who had become my chosen family over the years. David came over that evening with takeout and a sympathetic ear. My friend Alicia, who had faced similar family dynamics, called to check in and validate my decision. Colleagues who had become friends offered support and distraction through invitations to dinners and weekend activities. Most importantly, Marcus contacted me with words of encouragement that meant more than he could know. "I'm proud of you," he said during our call. "What you did was incredibly difficult but necessary. For what it's worth, I think you made the right decision." His support was particularly meaningful because he understood the full context of our family history and still stood by me. We talked at length about the complicated feelings that arise when establishing boundaries with family, the mixture of liberation and loss that accompanies such decisions. "It gets easier," he assured me, "and you've created space for something healthier to potentially grow in the future." The professional support system I had built also proved invaluable during this period. Dr. Logan scheduled an additional session to help me process the confrontation and its aftermath. "What you're experiencing is a form of grief," she explained during our meeting. "You're mourning the family relationship you wished you had, while simultaneously establishing boundaries with the family relationship you actually have. Both processes involve loss and adjustment." She helped me develop strategies for managing the continued pressure from family members and the uncomfortable emotions that surfaced. Most importantly, she reinforced that maintaining boundaries wasn't selfish but essential for authentic relationships. "Healthy boundaries aren't walls," she reminded me. "They're bridges that allow for connection while protecting your well-being. Your family may eventually learn to cross that bridge respectfully, or they may not. Either way, you've done what's necessary for your own health." 2 weeks after the confrontation, the tone of communication from my family began to shift. The angry accusations gave way to attempts at reconciliation, though these often contained subtle manipulations. My mother called with a voice full of tears, speaking of family unity and forgiveness. My father sent an email suggesting we put this unfortunate misunderstanding behind us. Jessica's approach was the most transparent. After her initial fury subsided, she sent a message that read partly as an apology, but ended with another request for financial help, albeit a smaller amount. "Even 10,000 would make a huge difference right now," she wrote, as if the entire confrontation had been merely a negotiation tactic. I responded to each communication with calm consistency, acknowledging their feelings while maintaining my boundaries. To Jessica's reduced request, I reiterated my offer to help with financial planning and resources, but not with direct monetary assistance. The situation with their house resolved itself in ways I hadn't anticipated. Through Marcus, I learned that my parents had ultimately reached out to other family members and pooled resources to make a partial payment to the bank, buying Jessica and Tyler more time. In the end, they sold the house in a short sale, taking a significant loss but avoiding foreclosure on their credit record. They moved into a much more modest apartment, and for the first time in their adult lives, both Jessica and Tyler found steady employment. Tyler took a position at a local car dealership, ironically selling the luxury vehicles he could no longer afford, while Jessica began working as an administrative assistant at a law firm. Approximately 6 months after our confrontation, I received an unexpected email from my father. Unlike his previous communications, this one contained no guilt trips or manipulations. Instead, it offered a glimpse of reflection I hadn't thought possible. "I've been thinking a lot about our family dynamics," he wrote. "Your mother wouldn't want me sharing this, but I've realized there might be some truth to what you said about how we've treated you and Jessica differently over the years. It wasn't intentional. Jessica always seemed to need more help, and you were so capable. I think we took your stability for granted." He went on to share that he and my mother had begun seeing a counselor to address their financial issues and relationship challenges. "The foreclosure scare was a wake-up call," he admitted. "We're learning to say no to Jessica, which hasn't been easy. She's not speaking to us right now, which feels familiar after what happened with you." The email ended with a tentative question about whether we might start rebuilding our relationship, perhaps with a phone call every few weeks. It wasn't an explicit apology, but it represented a level of awareness I hadn't expected, and a willingness to change that seemed genuine. I responded affirmatively to his suggestion, and we established a Sunday evening call every other week. These conversations were initially awkward and surface level, but over time, they developed into more authentic exchanges. My mother occasionally joined, though she struggled more than my father to acknowledge the past patterns. My relationship with Jessica remained distant. She reached out sporadically with superficial messages, but showed little interest in developing a deeper connection. I accepted this reality with a combination of sadness and understanding. Some relationships could heal and evolve. Others might remain limited by the other person's capacity for growth. A year after the confrontation that changed everything, I found myself in a place of unexpected peace. My career continued to flourish, my personal relationships deepened, and my life in Boston felt increasingly fulfilling. The boundaries I had established with my family remained intact, but they had evolved from rigid defenses into flexible guidelines that allowed for genuine, if limited, connection. The most profound change wasn't in my external circumstances, but in my internal landscape. I no longer measured my worth by my family's recognition or approval. I had learned to value my own journey and achievements without needing external validation. Most importantly, I had discovered that standing firm in my truth, even when painful, could lead to growth and healing that passive acceptance never would. On the anniversary of that difficult video call, I sat on my rooftop deck, watching the sunset over Boston and reflecting on everything that had transpired. The journey from seeking approval to establishing boundaries had been challenging but necessary. By refusing to participate in unhealthy dynamics, I had not only protected myself, but potentially created space for my family to grow in ways that might not have been possible otherwise. The condo that had inadvertently triggered so much conflict had become more than just a home. It represented my commitment to building a life aligned with my values rather than others' expectations. Each room contained memories of friends gathered for dinners, quiet evenings of reflection, and moments of simple joy that had nothing to do with proving my worth to anyone. As twilight settled over the city, I thought about how often we confuse love with enablement, how boundaries are sometimes the most caring gift we can offer. My family might never fully understand my decision, but I knew with certainty that it had been the right one, not just for me, but for all of us. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that put your needs first, even when others didn't understand? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries and finding your worth. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message, sharing could help them more than you know. Thank you for being here and listening to my journey. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stand firm in your truth.